everyone. My name is Barsha Karki. I would like to pay my respects to the traditional custodians of the lands from where I'm calling today. Welcome to another episode of All About Data, where I chat with industry experts around the use and aspects of data that matters to them. Today, we cover a topic which is really close to my heart and that I'm really passionate about. And the topic is STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, and women in engineering and IT. With me today is Arti Agrawal, Director of Women in Engineering and IT, University of Technology, Sydney. Arti is a bold and fierce leader and is a huge supporter of the cause herself. Welcome, Arti.
Thank you, Barsha. It's nice to be here.
Could you tell us a bit about your role and what it means for you to be in that position?
All right, I'll start also by an acknowledgement of country. I'm standing on the lands of the Gadigal people, where UTS is, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging. So to talk about my role, I have a split role. I'm an associate professor in electrical and data engineering, and I'm the director of women in engineering and IT. And it's a fantastic role because it gives me a chance to do research in an area that I really love, which is fiber optics. And as you know, telecoms is driving the post-COVID and during COVID economy right now. Without telecoms, we'd have nothing. So that's part of my role. And the other part, which is women in engineering and IT, is extremely close to my heart. Mm-hmm. Main vision that we have at Women in Engineering and IT is to remove gender as an obstacle. Mm-hmm. Study or career journeys in engineering and IT. So we don't want anyone to say, oh, I can't do engineering or IT because I'm a girl or I'm a boy or I'm a woman. It should be open to everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Arti. And it's great to hear from you about your role, your passion for the cause, but also you having a doctorate degree yourself, so much publications within research field as well. And a very practical application to the telecommunications industry. So thank you for being a role model and then leading the charge as well. I'm very interested to hear from you, given you are all about research, very interested to hear from you around some data around women's participation in schools and then to universities and potentially what ends up in the industry. Could you share some insights with us around that?
Sure, thank you. And thanks for asking that question, because many times when we talk about gender and gender-related topics, people don't always agree and they think, oh, everything's fine. But the data tells a story, and you know that.
Absolutely.
It tells us what's happening. So what we're seeing is that at school level, and I'm talking about Australia, at school level in year 12, enrollments in engineering is 10% female and 90% male. Mm-hmm. And for computing, it's 19% female and 81% male.
Yeah, very similar to when I went to uni, and that was a long time ago. So, yeah.
Yeah, it's not changing. So less than 20% of engineering and IT enrollments in school are women or females. And then this doesn't improve a lot when we get to university. And what we find is that over the last 20 years or so, the female participation on average in engineering has stayed about 15%.
That's not really great because even though there's so much effort and energy and a lot of work being done, right? Like from the likes of yourself and the industry. So in terms of UTS, what have you changed? What have you seen as a change from 10 years ago to now?
Well, there's been a lot of change at UTS. First of all, UTS is really committed to gender equity and to creating social justice. So there's a lot of our programs and the approach we take is towards these things. And that reflects in the sort of numbers we're seeing. So UTS in itself, for its engineering and IT cohort, has seen an increase in female participation from about 16% to 24% in the last 10 years. So that's about a jump of 8%.
Yeah.
And if you look at the Australian average, it's about 15-16%. So we're currently above the Australian average by a significant amount. And I should add here, that's the female enrollment that we're on participation in degrees at university that we're increasing. The workforce participation is not that rosy.
No.
15% only.
Well, as a UTS alumni, I'm happy to hear that UTS has above average female participation in the last 10 years. I know, Arti, you also write on your blogs about science, education, and policy, and I follow your blogs. And I was especially intrigued with what you brought up in one of your latest blogs about why I try to sponsor people. And the point that intrigued me that you brought up in the article was women are over-mentored and under-sponsored. Could you elaborate a little bit around that point?
Barsha, you're just asking me questions that I really want. Thank you. So mentoring is about preparing someone and encouraging them to build skills and working with them on that directly. And sponsorship, as you know and others would know, is about working indirectly to open doors for a person, to give them opportunities that they can't access themselves. So in a way, the person is ready. It's just that they don't have access. That's the difference. And what happens very often is that women will keep getting mentored and people will keep training them and helping them improve, but they still don't get access to opportunity.
Yeah.
So if you keep going on 1,000 leadership courses, but you never get a leadership position, how are you going to demonstrate that you're a good leader?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's what's happening with women and other minority groups as well.
Yeah. And I agree with that. There is a lot of programs that still look at what can we do to support women, or where are they not, where do they not feel confident? Let's try to work on that confidence. But then, to actually give them that opportunity to show up, and I know you work with industry partners as well. Well, looking at your work with industry partners and even the Lucy mentoring program that I've participated in a few years now, why is it? What's the gap still? Even though there's industry partnership, and we think we're making a difference, why is there? What's the gap, and why is there still a gap? And what can we do? That's a big question for you.
Yeah, that's a big question. So let me start by talking a bit about Lucy. As you know, the Lucy mentoring program, our undergraduate and master's by coursework students are connected with industry mentors.
Mm-hmm.
This is a case of mentoring the students, helping them meet role models, helping them understand how to transition from study to workplace,
mm-hmm.
and preparing them, giving them the confidence or the skills they need to enter the workplace. When the program began, it was about 10 students a year.
Wow.
Today, the program is more than 120 students a year. So it's a 12-fold increase, more than that.
Awesome work.
That's because of industry participation, that we have wonderful mentors like yourself and others who engage and give their time to help mentor these female students and get them into the industry. But obviously, the need is much greater than 120 students and 120 mentors. And there are several issues at hand. So there's not one single issue.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems is culture.
Yeah.
And that culture is in schools, it's in universities, it's in the larger public, but it is also present in industry.
Mm-hmm.
Some of our students, when they go on internships or placements, or when they join a job, they enter a world where suddenly they're facing sexism, or they're facing some degree of misogyny, or a culture which is very male-dominated, and some of them don't feel happy about it. And they can leave. So we do hear that from students, that it is off-putting or difficult for them. So even if we have lots of students graduating from university, unless the culture in the industry is welcoming, it's going to be difficult to retain this talent. And, we talked about under sponsorship and over mentoring.
Yes.
So fantastic women like you who are in industry and others, once they're in the industry, what is their progression? Is it enough? Is it sufficient? And other gaps would be, when we go to schools and we talk to young people, they don't know what engineering is.
Correct.
The idea of engineering or an engineer is someone in a hard hat.
Yeah.
And some very stereotypical images. But engineering is much more than that. IT is much more than that. So how do we actually get across to them what engineering and IT is and what impact it has on humanity and the whole world, to get them engaged and inspired? So there's lots of these things that are at play together.
That's right, Arti. And I can see now, from the gaps, but also from what the efforts have been being put in from the likes of, Women in Engineering and IT team at UTS. We're going and talking to primary school students, high school students, and getting industry people, and not just men, but females, to show the women, the young women, what is possible for them. And then in universities, okay, so now what does workplace look like? Take them out of the school into workplaces. And I think that's a lot of, that's really good work from the team. And I've been a huge supporter and a fan over the years, and especially being an alumni as well, I'm a bit biased, but I see the impact, right? And from my mentees also, the feedback, and all the graduation programs that I've been, the feedback is really, really great. Like, they come out of on the other end of the program being really confident and knowing what's possible for them, and also navigating through to how to get to that point, right? And having role models is really, really great as well. Yeah.
When we run our programs, when we go to high schools, primary schools, and Lucy, we actually do try to find out how much of an impact we're having through data.
Yeah.
We survey our students before we do a program with them, and we survey them afterwards to see if their confidence has increased in STEM, if their confidence in themselves to do STEM subjects, interest in STEM has increased or not. And we find that has increased. And we also find that when we go to schools, we can't just go once and change a student's mind. We have to go multiple times and do problem-based learning with them so that they see some real-world problems, tinker around with things. That's when they get really engaged.
Yeah.
And the thing with Lucy, you talked about confidence of the students at the other end of the program. So we found that when students do the Lucy program, there's almost a 60% increase in their sense of confidence.
Yeah.
The network that they perceive they have. So there's absolutely huge amounts that the program brings. And again, it's thanks to mentors like you. So I really have to say thank you to you, but also all the industry mentors who participate.
Yeah. And you touched on why women might not stay in the industry once they go. They might face different sorts of discrimination, or they think. And one of the other things that we talk about in the industry or the workplaces that I've been to is also unconscious bias. It's ones that are directly seen, others, and that that applies to all, male, females, even how we perceive ourselves. And I think the good thing is there is a lot of conversation around that. And one of the things I know from my time at NetApp, we've got so talking about that under sponsorship, right? And what is the industry actually doing? I know in NetApp we have internship programs, we have graduate programs where the grads actually go and spend 3 months in the US as part of the training, and there's multiple headcounts per year, and so I know there's initiatives that's being done, and yet still not enough. Right? Because in the last 10 years, if we've seen the jump is only like 5 or 6%. Yes, it's huge, but it's not where we want it to be, right?
Well, there's research that shows that if you want a massive change, you have to reach a certain threshold.
Yeah, okay.
And that threshold, so for example, if you have a room in which a meeting is taking place,
yeah,
right, and you want gender equity, so you might say, oh, we must have at least one woman in each committee or one woman in each group and so on. But what happens is if there's a single woman in the group or committee, she's not going to feel necessarily empowered to speak because she's the only woman.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that sense of pressure, is she a token person? She's just here because she's a woman.
Yeah.
She qualified to be here. Those kind of unconscious biases might come into play. What you need is a critical mass. So at least about 30 to 33% of the minority group to be present in the room for the change to happen. And then it happens more organically. So if you've got, say, 10 people in a committee and you want gender equity, you need at least 3 to 4 women in that committee for them to be effective. And once that critical mass starts happening, it becomes easier to increase gender equity or other forms of equity without having to push it.
Yeah, wow, Arti, this is news for me. Like now it all makes sense. Like I never had thought about the critical mass requirement. And yeah, and I've been in meetings, I've been in places where, I would have to think twice whether should I raise my question, or am I just going to be judged because I'm a girl and she doesn't know anything. There's always analysis paralysis going on for women a lot of the times, and I've been through that, right? But yeah, that's a very, very critical information. I did not know about it at all. And maybe in the next decade, once we reach that threshold of more than 30%, then, we won't be very far from that 50-50 or even more than 50%.
Well, yeah, and, data also tells us that not every organization or every industry or every level will be 50-50.
Yeah.
In some it'll be 40-60, some it'll be 60-40, some it'll be 35-75. That's okay. Those things will settle down organically to numbers which are appropriate for that organization. But first and foremost, we need to remove those obstacles.
Mm-hmm.
And it shouldn't be the case that someone thinks, I can't do this because I'm this gender. And you talked about analysis paralysis. That's a form of imposter syndrome. You put one person, one woman in a room or one minority person in the room, they're going to feel like they don't belong. And hence that is going to impact on how much they speak up.
Yeah.
How well they're heard as well.
Wow. We're touching some really deep topics. And I started the conversation saying this topic is really close to my heart. I think it's gone a little bit more closer, I think. Very close to home. What I know you're very fierce. Sorry, I know you're very fierce and bold in your demands. What is your demand from the industry partners now?
I would say there are two things, and they're connected to the problem. There is no silver bullet.
Mm-hmm.
You do one tick box and it'll solve everything there isn't. So I would say there's just two things that people have to do, which is reflection and resources.
Yeah.
Reflect on what your organization is like. Is the culture great? Are people making an effort? Are people feeling empowered to speak up? Are people willing to do things? Are the policies good? So wherever there are things that need fixing, fix them. And wherever things are excellent, acknowledge them and talk about them. So, but each organization will have its own situation, and therefore it must reflect on that. And the other is resources. So we all have to come together and collaborate instead of fighting for the same resource. And, we go to schools, we take industry professionals like yourself with us, and that helps. Some industries run their own program for outreach, and there are some NGOs which run programs and other organizations. And sometimes we're all trying to go to the same school.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's counterproductive, and we could probably work together.
Yeah.
Other is that we do need people, engineers and IT professionals who can show the kids what it's like in real life to work as an engineer or an IT professional. So having that resource is really valuable, and we really welcome people to work with us. And then the third is that, when you want to do this kind of programs that we are running, they're very, very high resource intensive programs.
Mm-hmm.
You can't run without resource.
Yeah.
And with the impact of COVID on everything, there's very little resource to go around. So we would have to shrink our program as well. And that will again impact the pipeline.
Yeah.
So we do need supporters to help us with that aspect as well.
Perfect. Thank you, Arti. So what I hear is resources in an organization or working together, resources to support organizations like yourselves, not just reflect on what's not working. So identify what's not working, but what's working, acknowledge it. So people are aware and people know it's working and what else can be done further, right? It's looking at the big picture, isn't it? Okay, here we are. This is what's working really well, and this is where we want to go. How do we get there? And it's a very clear vision then, isn't it?
And, data plays a part here. So, for example, when you're going to your boss or a NetApp and you're saying, I want to make a case for supporting UTS women in engineering and IT.
Yeah.
in making that case, how are you going to make that case? You'll have to reflect on what's worked.
Correct.
You have to show there's business sense. Actually, when we have more women, the productivity goes up, the profit goes up. That's why we should have more women. So you need numbers to support that. You would say, ever since we collaborated with this unit, we've had more female applicants for jobs.
Yeah.
Or other things, or we've seen this improvement in such and such way. So I think talking about that builds the business case. It builds the sense of commitment from people. People get to see and they think, oh, wow, this is working. We should do more of this, or this is excellent.
Yeah.
People who volunteer with us, industry professionals, you should see the degree of satisfaction they get from doing it. So many of our mentors say they feel much more engaged with their own work because they're mentoring someone.
I agree 100%. I'm one of those mentors, so I agree 100%. I really appreciate your openness and I love the fact that you're bringing everything to data. As in that being the base of where we are today and where we want to go, looking at what the impact has been so far. So I really appreciate this time and the chat and you just being open and being the awesome you. So thank you, Arti. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Barsha.